Shelley famously wrote that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. But with all respect to Mr. Shelley, I'd like to suggest that poets aren't legislators at all, and that's exactly why we need them, especially now. Poetry unties the knots of political rhetoric. It's in poems that language becomes a thing of beauty, a tool for provoking profundity, a gateway to thoughtful observance, a reminder of our collective goodness in our darkest hours. In this time in which we live amid a barrage of language, often used to divide us, poems are empathy machines. As Elizabeth Alexander recently said, poetry is a way to understand that you can depend on other human beings, even when human beings have failed you. Our nation needs our poets. Since 1946, the Academy has been the only poetry organization guided by a distinguished body of poets who give feedback on our programs, judge our largest prizes, and help us advocate for greater support for poets and poetry. We are a stronger and more effective organization because of our chancellors, and I'd like to introduce them, can we have the lights again, to all of you now. And when I call your name, chancellors, please stay standing. Elizabeth Alexander. I would ask if you could hold your applause until I've introduced everyone. Thank you. Derricotte, Forrest Gander, Linda Gregerson, Terrance Hayes, Brenda Hillman, Jane Hirshfield, Khaled Matawa, Marilyn Nelson, Alicia Ostriker, Claudia Rankine, Alberto Ríos, David St. John, and Arthur Z. I want to take this opportunity to offer special thanks to Toy, Jane, and Arthur, who are finishing their 6 years of service as chancellors, and to welcome Forrest, Terrance, David, and also Ellen Bass, who wasn't able to be with us this evening, to our Board of Chancellors. They were elected in January. And now it's my honor to begin this evening's reading by our nation's leading voices by introducing Elizabeth Alexander.
Hello. I'm going to read 3 poems about men, as it happens, who are at a moment of fighting for their freedom in some kind of way. The first is Henry Box Brown, who mailed himself from the South, where he was a slave, to the North in a box. The second is Nat Turner, who led a slave insurrection. And the third is about Adam Clayton Powell and Stokely Carmichael. Passage. Henry Porter wore good clothes for his journey, the best his wife could make from the leftover cambric shoes stolen from the master. They bit his feet, but if he took them off, he feared he'd never get them on again. He needed to look like a free man when he got there. Still in a box in the jostling heat, nostrils to a board pried into a vent. A peephole, too, he'd hoped, but there was only black to see. There was nothing to do but sleep and dream and weep. Sometimes the dreams were frantic loneliness and acid at his heart. Freedom was near but unimaginable. Anxiety roiled inside of him, a brew which corroded his stomach, whose fumes clamped his lungs and his throat. When the salt pork and cornbread were finished, he dreamed of cream and eggs, but the dreams made him sick. He soiled himself and each time was ashamed. He invented games, tried to remember everything his mother ever told him, every word he hadn't understood, every vegetable he'd ever eaten, which was easy: kale, okra, corn, carrots, beans, chard, yams, dandelion greens. Remember everyone's name who had ever been taken away. The journey went that way. When he got there, his suit was chalky with his salt and soiled, the shoes waxy with blood. The air smelled of a surfeit of mackerel. Too tired to weep, too tired to look through the peephole and see what freedom looked like, he waited for the man to whom he'd shipped himself, Mr. William Still, undertaker, Philadelphia. He repeated the last words he'd spoken to anyone. Goodbye, wife Clotilde, daughter Eliza, best friend Luke. Goodbye, everyone, goodbye. When I can, I'll come for you. I swear, I'll come for you. Nat Turner dreams of insurrection. Epigraph from the Confessions of Nat Turner in 1831. His narrative, too much sense to be raised, and if I was, I would never be of any service to anyone as a slave. Drops of blood on the corn as dew from heaven. Forms of men in different attitudes portrayed in blood. Numbers, glyphs on woodland leaves, also in blood. Freedom, a dipperful of cold well water. Freedom, the wide white sky. Dreams that make me sweat. Because I am called, I must appear so, prepare. I am not a conjurer, certain marks on my head and breast. Shelter me, great dismal swamp, a green-blue sky which roils. And then to conclude, Stokely and Adam. There's an amazing photograph of the two of them laughing at something. We don't know what they were always thought of as being on sort of polar ends of the freedom struggle, but they're sharing something in this picture. Stokely and Adam. Stokely says now. Adam says soon. Stokely says straight ahead. Adam says to the side. Stokely says black power. Adam says power. Stokely says global. Adam says Harlem is the center of the world. Stokely, sweet potatoes. Adam, sweet potato pie. Adam, don't buy where you can't work. Stokely, freedom ride. Stokely says, yeah. Adam says, yeah. Adam says, preach. Stokely says, talk. Agitate, agitate, agitate. Adam says, inside the system. Stokely says, the system will bite you in the ass. Adam says, you think I don't know that? Adam says, even inside is outside. Adam and Stokely, us black folks, got to stick together. Stokely, we had only the old language of love and suffering. Adam, keep the faith, baby. Sugar in their eyes, ketchup in their hair. I was burning, said Stokely Carmichael, witnessing the kids at the lunch counters. Why I do what I do, why I burn, why I work, said Adam Clayton Powell. Why I serve. Thank you.
Good evening, Toy Derricotte. This is my last reading as Chancellor, and I'd like to express how deeply I am grateful to have experienced this honor. To the Academy, especially to Jen and Mary, and the staff for their work, the Chancellors for their brave poems and their generous friendship through these years. To you, the audience, for your love of poetry, and a special shout out to my love, Kavi Khanum. I'm going to read two poems. An old poem, that's one of my favorites. I do remember Stanley Kunitz once saying that a new poem for him was anything he had written in the past 25 years. So, and then I am going to read a new poem. The Minx. This poem, I'd say, is about growing up in the first black middle-class neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan in the 40s and 50s. The Minx, M-I-N-K-S. In the backyard of our house on Norwood, There were 500 steel cages lined up, each with a wooden box roofed with tar paper. Inside, 2 stories with straw for a bed. Sometimes the minks would pace back and forth wildly, looking for a way out. Or else they'd hide in their wooden houses, even when we'd put the offering of raw horse meat on their trays, as if they knew they were beautiful and wanted to deprive us. In spring, the placid kits drank with glazed eyes. Sometimes the mothers would go mad and snap their necks. My uncle would lift the roof like a god who might lift our roof, look down on us, and take us out to safety. Sometimes one would escape. He would go down on his hands and knees, aiming a flashlight like a bullet of light, hoping to catch the orange gold of its eyes. He wore huge boots, gloves so thick their little teeth couldn't bite through. They're wild, he'd say. Never trust them. Each afternoon, when I put the scoop of raw meat rich with eggs and vitamins on their trays, I'd call to each a greeting. Their small, thin faces would follow as if slightly curious. In fall, they went out in a van, returning sorted, matched, their skins hanging down on huge metal hangers pinned by their mouths. My uncle would take them out when company came and drape them over his arm, the sweetest cargo. He'd plow down the pelts softly, and the hairs would part for his breath and show the shining underlife which, like the shining of the soul, gives us each character and beauty. And a new poem after the Gwendolyn Brooks reading. She sits at the book signing table with a colorful African wrap tied around her head, her chin in her palm, elbow on the table as if resting her brain, that silvery jello in its luminous oyster shell, listening intently to each one of the women who have come on a church bus in large church hats. They squawk with joy as they hand her bedraggled books taken down from their most honored shelves. And she who conceived of Maud Martha, that woman who, by sparing a kitchen mouse, discovered unfurling her own great wings of compassion, talks to each one, letting them take as many pictures as they like, sandwiched between them, small, dignified, and perfectly at ease. Thank you.
Pleased to be here. This is my first year with the Academy, and my name is Forrest Gander. Sun. It is not the mirror that is draped, but what remains unspoken between us. Why say anything about death, inevitability, how the body comes to deploy the myriad worm, as if it were a manageable concept, not searing, exquisite singularity, to serve it up like a eulogy or a tale of my own or your own suffering, some kind of self-abasement. And so we continue waking to a decapitated sun, and trees continue to irk me. The heart of charity bears its own set of genomes. You lug a galaxy of bacteria in the crook of your knee, and through my guts squirm helminth parasites. Who was ever only themselves. At Leptis Magna, when your mother and I were young, we came across statues of gods with their faces and feet cracked away by vandals. But for the row of guardian Medusa heads, no one so brave to deface those. When she spoke, when your mother spoke, even the leashed greyhound stood transfixed. I stood transfixed. I gave my life to strangers. I kept it from the ones I love. Her one arterial child. It is just in you her blood runs. Beckoned. At which point my grief sounds ricocheted outside of language, something like a drifting swarm of bees. At which point, in the tetric silence that followed, I was swarmed by those bees and lost consciousness, at which point there was no way out for me either. At which point I carried on in a semi-coma, dreaming I was awake, avoiding friends and puking, plucking stingers from my face and arms. At which point her voice was pinned to a backdrop of vaporous color. At which point the crane's bustles flared. At which point, coming to, I knew I'd pay the whole flagpole fare. At which point the driver turned and said it doesn't need to be your fault for it to break you. At which point, without any lurching commencement, he began to play a vulture bone flute. At which point I grew old, and it was like ripping open the beehive with my hands again. At which point I conceived a realm more real than life. At which point there was at least some possibility in which I didn't believe, of being with her once more. Epitaph. To write, "You existed me," would not be merely a deaf translation, for there is no sequel to the passage when I saw, as you would never again be revealed. You see me, as I would never again be revealed. Where I stand now before the throne of glory, the script must remain hidden. Where, but in the utterance itself? The dream was enough, you took the risk, despite you'd found no resilient design. The semi-sustenance of the possible, whoever lived on that. Born halt and blind, hooped in by obligations, aware of the stare of the animal inside, I hide behind mixed instrumentalities as behind a square of crocodile scoot, while cyanide drifts from clouds to the rivers, and in this too might be seen a figuration of the human, another intimately lethal gesture of our common existence. Though I also wear my life into death, the ugliness I originate outlives me. And finish with this short poem on a sentence by Fernanda Melchor. ¿Qué es lo más cabrón que te ha pasado en la vida? The most fucked up thing to happen to me. Addled by busyness, I crumpled my life and let it drop, and then I outlived my life, rocking on my misery like a cypress in the wind. I watched stars emerge from a black egg, lucidity of loss. Someone came to tell me the spider vibrating on its long legs in the ceiling corner over my desk does not exist now. It is wedged between the violent uninterruptedness of one single day and the void I discovered inside myself, forehead tautening with self-pity. I said, "You think you know me, but you don't know me from Adam's goat." And she said, "I do, and you are one and the same thing."
I am Linda Gregerson. One poem, but it's in several sections. The title is Sleeping Bear, and it is named not for a sleeping bear, but for a national lakeshore park in northern Michigan. The sand dunes are what are imagined to be bears. Sleeping Bear. 1. The backstory is always of hardship, isn't it? No other choices and hoping for better on foreign shores. A minute ago, as measured by the sand dunes here, the shipping lanes were thick with them. From Hamburg, Limerick, towns along the Oslo fjord, and lucky to have found the work. The Michigan woodlands hadn't been denuded yet a minute ago. So one of the routes was lumber, and the other tapped a prairie's worth of corn. There's a sort of cushioned ignorance that comes of being born and then allowed to live in safety, so I used to think it must have been more forgiving here, less brutal than the brutal North Atlantic with its fathoms and its ice. But no. The winds, the reefs, there's something to do with narrower troughs between the waves, and lakes like this are deadlier than oceans. In a single year, the weather claimed 1 in every 4. We come for the scale of it. Waters without a limit the eye can apprehend, and could there be some mistake, aren't salt. Dunes that dwarf pretension, which if falsely consoling is right and good. Where commerce lifts its sleeping head. If I had the lungs for diving, I expect I'd be there too, among the broken ribs and keels. Visitors need a place to sleep and something to fill up the evenings. It's natural. The people in town need jobs. Calamity turned profit in tranquility. My father's father's father was among the ones who did not drown, who sold his ship and bought a farm, too. What is it about the likes of us who cannot take it in until the body of a single Syrian 3-year-old lies face down on the water's edge, or this week's child, who pulled from the rubble, wipes with the back and then the heel of his small left hand, this time we have a video too, the blood congealing near his eye, then wipes. This is a problem. You can see him thinking where, the hand on the chair where the medic has put him. So many children, so little space in our rubble-strewn hearts. In alternative news feeds, I am cautioned there is history, there is such a thing as bias, that to see is not to understand, which, yes, I know. The poster child, the ad space, my consent to be governed by traffic in arms is true and quite beside the point. The boy on the beach, foreshortened in the photograph, looks smaller than his nearly 3 years would make him, which contributes to the poignancy. The waves have combed his dark hair smooth. The water on the shingle, indifferent to aftermath, shines. 3. There was once, says the legend, a wind-borne fire, or as some will recount it, a famine, and a mother bear with her 2 cubs was driven into the lake. They swam for many hours until the smaller of the cubs began to weaken, and despite all the mother could do, was drowned. Then the second cub also. So when the mother reached the shore, which then, as now, betokened a land of plenty, she lay down with her face to the shimmering span whose other side was quite beyond her powers of return. The islands we call Manitou, the one and then the other, are her cubs. She can see them. We go to them now by ferry. We are not the people to whom the legend belongs. 4. Stroke of the pen. 1642 on a Friday. Say you were already in the air. You've given away your blankets, your tent. You thought you'd seen the last of the camps. Or say it was your buddy from the 82nd Airborne, interpreter, ally, engineer, targeted twice because of what he did for you. His papers are no good now. Your promises were lies, detrimental, says the president, malicious intent. Says only those who love us. That's your favorite part. 5. If a spirit, call him Manitou, takes pity on a family of bears, or more to the point, if humans imagine they share the earth with bears who are worthy of pity, and a cognizant spirit, however remote, has pity to spare, why then a sand dune may be more than sifted silica. The wind goes on with its sorting. The lake bed cradles its dead. But part of the language the glacier used to speak to the sculpted substrate will include this bit of sediment. We didn't mean to fail you. We were here.
Hey, everybody. First time up here. I'm looking forward to the work we'll do. My name is Terrance. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. I lock you in an American sonnet that is part prison, part panic closet, a little room and a house set aflame. I lock you in a form that is part music box, part meat grinder, to separate the song of the bird from the bone. I lock your persona in a dream-inducing sleeper hold while your better selves watch from the bleachers. I make you both Jim and Crow here. As the Crow, you undergo a beautiful catharsis, trapped one night in the shadows of the gym. As the Jim, the feel of crow shit dropping to your floors is not unlike the stars falling from the pep rally posters on your walls. I make you a box of darkness with a bird in its heart, voltas of acoustics, instinct, and metaphor. It is not enough to love you. It is not enough to want you destroyed. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. For her last birthday, I found in a used New Jersey toy store a 6-inch Amiri Baraka action figure with 3 different outfits, an elaborately colored dashiki with afro pick, a black linen Leninist getup, and a sports coat with elbow patches and wool kango. Accessories include an ink pen and its grandfather's pistol. If you dip him in bath water, he will leak the names of his abandoned children. Pull a string and he sings preface to a 20-volume suicide note sweeter than the sweetest alto ever to sing in the boys' choir of Harlem. The store clerk tried selling me the actual 20-volume note Leroy Jones wrote the night before Baraka put a bullet in him. I would have bought it, but I had no room in my suitcase. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. If you have never felt what is fluid in a woman run warm along your thighs and testicles, Mr. Trumpet, if you do not know that the first man was in fact a woman whose clit grew so swollen with longing it hung like a finger pointing towards the lover stirring her meadows, Mr. Trumpet, what the fuck do you know? You are lonely because you could never unhitch your mother's terrifying, radiant woe. I mean my mother here. She is the crazy bitch in me. She is the way I weep. She is the way I break. She manly, Mr. Trumpet. I can't speak for you, but men like me, who have never made love to a man, will always be somewhere in the folds of our longing, ashamed of it. American sonnet for my past and future assassin. But there never was a black male hysteria like the logic of one who litters to lower the number of fires caused by burning cigarettes tossed in trash cans is relatively low, but fear of fire probably explains the number of butts everywhere. In New York, democracy is like the story of many black people in America are rarely compulsive. High-fivers believe joy is a matter of touching others is forbidden. The only word God doesn't know, you have to heal yourself. To truly be heroic, you have to think of killing yourself. Awareness requires a touch of blindness, and self-importance is the only word God knows. To be free is to live because only the dead are slaves. Let me try that one again a different way. American Sonnet, it's the same poem for my past and future assassin. But there never was a black male hysteria like the logic of one who litters to lower the number of fires caused by burning cigarettes tossed in trash cans is relatively low, but fear of fire probably explains the number of butts everywhere. In New York, democracy is like the story of many. Black people in America are rarely compulsive. High-fivers believe joy is a matter of touching others. Is forbidden the only word God doesn't know? You have to heal yourself to truly be heroic. You have to think of killing yourself. Awareness requires a touch of blindness and self. Importance is the only word God knows. To be free is to live because only the dead are slaves. And this is the last one. American Sonnet for my past and future assassin. I played silence, which is 7 letters, but later I realized my word of the year was quiet, especially the chasm of quiet and cataclysm, one of those Scrabble words played but once or twice a life. Maybe Scrabble is a portmanteau of scream and babble, or scrap and bramble. Sometimes it is best to sting, sometimes it is best to scramble away. Sometimes it's a good answer to any existential question. Moving through the tangle of bramble on your way to scrap with death at the pier, remember to sing a battle song. The one I prepared goes this way. Come and meet me in the water, swim the twilight by and by. Come meet me in the water, swim the mirror of the sky. Come meet me in the water by and by. I sing it every day.
Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with my fellow chancellors, and thanks to the Academy, everyone there, and to everyone here at the 92nd Y. I've never been in this building. I've heard about it, and I know it's a legendary place, so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to start with a poem, the first poem in Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire. I wanted to read an autumn poem, a harvest poem, and the occasion of this was that I had been driving past a pumpkin field, and I had the thought that the pumpkins were experiencing something completely different from me, and it had nothing to do with me. To spirits of fire after harvest, Between earth and its noun, I felt a fire. What does it mean by I, Mrs.? It means, and I quote, one of the vowels in the brain and some of the U's. We were interested in the type of thing humans can't know, interested in kinds of animals think, a rabbit or a skink. You Mrs. Skiltonianus, when autumn brings a grammar, wasps circle the dry stalks, and you can totally see through amber ankles dangling in dazzle under our Lord, the Son of Literature. Between noon and its noun, there were ridged and golden runes on pumpkins, bluish gourds in the fields, their white eyes lined up inside. Wait a sec. Please don't nail the door shut. The air is friendly and non-existent as Veronica's veil. Earth, don't torment your fool, your ambassador clown. Bring the X of oxygen and sex, a fox running sideways through present noon. I just wrote this a few weeks ago. It's the occasion was we've had some invasions of white supremacists in Berkeley, and so people have been going out in the streets. And I was teaching anapestic rhythms in my prosody class, the anapestic substitution and the iambic line, so I thought I would try it. Anapests and crows at Civic Center. The fascists have entered the town, sun like a late ripe peach. City says no to masks. We go with the crows in the crowd. A defensive line is made. My telomeres all lined up. The state prepares the tear gas canisters, almost wrote teenage canisters. The pronoun is making a mask. A defensive line is made. We go with the G and the H. Poets are often tired. We don't think the hitting will work. We grow calm among the zeros. My house was a little too calm. Our telomeres all lined up. I'm too old to jump over walls. A terrible beauty is dead, and the sun was tender upon us. I don't think the hitting will work. A defensive line is made. A poem is not a protest. The Nazis have entered the park. Subject to history's impress, my telomeres all lined up. Subject to cosmic rays. Aw, 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 says the crow. The house was a little too calm. Was thinking of Nicholas Guillen, was thinking of William Blake. We go with the crows in the crowd. Free screech, hate, 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 hate. I'm too old to jump over walls. A defensive line is made. Subject to history's impress, nice Germans in 38. I don't think the hitting will work. Changed utterly, wrote Yeats. Sun like a late ripe peace. The state unfolds the tear gas canisters. We follow the crows, aw, aw, aw. A defensive line is made, a defensive line is made, a defensive line is made. My house was a little too calm. A defensive line is made. I follow the crows in the calm. Repeat, 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 repeat. And I'll close with, this was on the poets.org website. It's from a book that I'll be publishing in the spring. It's called The Bride Tree Can't Be Read, and it's about poetry. The bride tree puts down its roots below the phyla. It is there when we die and when we are born, middle and upper branches reaching the planet heart by the billions during a revolution we don't see. Quarks and leptons are cooling on their infant stems, spinning the spinning brain of matter, fled to electrical dark water, species with names the tree can hold, in the shale shade brought by the ambulance of art. No one but you knows what occurred in the dress you wore, in the dream of atonement, the displaced tree in the dream you wore, a suffering endurable only once, edges that sought release from envy to a more endurable loss, a form to be walked past that has outworn the shame of time, its colors sprung through description above a blaze of rhizomes, spreading in an arable mat that mostly isn't simple, but is calm and free.
I am Jane Hirshfield, and it has been a tremendous honor to be part of this community of chancellors for the past 6 years. This is my final reading. I'm going to give you a set of poems centered on the crisis of the biosphere, which we are well into, sometimes called the sixth extinction. As if hearing heavy furniture moved on the floor above us. As things grow rarer, they enter the ranges of counting. Remain this many Siberian tigers, that many African elephants, 300 red egrets. We scrape from the world its tilt and meander of wonder, as if eating the last burned onions and carrots from a cast iron pan. Closing eyes to taste better the char of ordinary sweetness. This poem was written well before the most recent events confirming the fragility of the state of Florida. It also travels through Syria, terrorism, evolution, and the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean. Day beginning with seeing the International Space Station and a full moon over the Gulf of Mexico and all its invisible fishes. None of this had to happen. Not Florida, not the ibis's beak, not water. Not the horseshoe crab's empty body, and not the living starfish. Evolution might have turned left at the corner and gone down another street entirely. The asteroid might have missed. The seams of limestone need not have been susceptible to sand and mangroves. The radio might have found a different music. The hips of one man and the hips of another might have stood beside each other on a bus in Aleppo and recognized themselves as long-lost brothers. The key could have broken off in the lock, and the nail can refused its lid. I might have been the fish the brown pelican swallowed. You might have been the way the moon kept not setting long after we thought it would, long after the sun was catching inside the low wave curls coming in at a certain angle. The light might not have been eaten again by its moving. If the unbearable were not weightless, we might yet buckle under the grief of what hasn't changed yet. Across the world, a man pulls a woman from the water from which the leapt-from overfilled boat has entirely vanished. From the water pulls one child, another. Both are living, and both will continue to live. This did not have to happen. No part of this had to happen. A moment knows itself penultimate. A moment knows itself penultimate, usable, spendable, good yet, but only for reckoning up. A moment knows something's almost over, but not what it is. There is still time, the day sings its old round. Time still is here, though you can't hear the new thing arriving inside the knots of its ticking, though you can't feel the brush of its wing on the nape of your life, or hope for the voice to arrive as it has always, saying, "Come, I've returned to you. Here is your gift." The moment finds itself weary, blindered. Language confuses its ears. Some things that are frayed can be turned inside out, can be darned, can be quilted. Others are used up completely. It's like the custom for the widow at certain funerals. Friends speak, children, the many long-disguised lovers. The widow's task is different. She does not speak. And I will finish with this poem, also published on poets.org, Poem a Day series. Let them not say. Let them not say we did not see it. We saw. Let them not say we did not hear it. We heard. Let them not say they did not taste it. We ate. We trembled. Let them not say it was not spoken, not written. We spoke. We witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say they did nothing. We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say, something, a kerosene beauty, it burned. Let them say we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Khaled Matawa. I'm honored and delighted to be here. Thank you, Jen, for bringing us together, and to the 92nd Street Y for hosting us tonight. I thought I would follow the mood, but there's so many moods, and so many of them are dark. I don't have a light poem, unfortunately. And all are new. It is in the nature of dreams, a poem for my cousins, broadly speaking. It is in the nature of dreams, where what smiles grimaces, and what flowers wilts beyond seasons hold, reasons hold, according to our great master. And so it is when people tire of their beliefs, when the oneness of origins becomes doubtful, and an all-encompassing injury or perceived treason takes hold of the collective mind. The list of exclusions grows longer, and the pure path narrows until it fits only those guarding it. Am I a dream that lives out itself, or a role in a drama that does not end? Is my life someone else's dream, or nightmare, mine or his? The answers await interpretation, as always, or some supplement of the known world, a hallucination that eases them into conviction until residual fears grow manifest as a torch, a semi-automatic gun. It's the brutality of the powerful again, who perceive themselves as victims. There's no use in recalling the ancestor encased in museum glass whose blood flows through your veins and theirs. No use in showing that the map of human bones leads not to the horror of their dream, so close now, so realizable, it fills them with glee. Then suddenly, because we are still in a dream, you find yourself knocking on the glass window, rattling and shaking the camp's wire fence. You are speaking their language, which used to be yours, reciting their epics, teaching them their own history, again, once yours, all to convince them that you are more than body, that in the genus you share remains some kinship, some use, and in hope, and with hope, a budding hope, you cling to your sleep, steering the dream from its savage but familiar end. We'll be in the same cabins then, I will be in the bunk beside you, howling and moaning the nightmare that has no end. This is a poem called Malouk's poem. Malouk is a character from the novel Black Titanics by the Eritrean novelist Abubakar Kahal. This is set in somewhere in the Sahara, more likely in my native Libya. Malouk's poem. I scroll a few words to her on WhatsApp or Viber to blot out the day. I bring my nose close to the screen to smell the photos she sends. Selfies of her by the gas stove, or the baby making a gesture, a smile or a yawn. Sometimes a video of an old song. She asks about the sea. It's calm, but the traffickers no show. She breaks me, a softness that turns me dusk. I, the poet dissident, who labor to rephrase with healing the nation's inflamed contract, who rove the bone sculptures made governments, the sanctuaries filled fear bright eyes, my words now monosyllabic, soft as sighs. There was blindness in my game, my epic of home. I hear the smugglers, their pupils shifting as if following a maddened goal, some bootleg spasm and discharge, a blindness that cannot stop seeing, eyes that keep shifting like this in their graves. I see my spirit too, a plastic cloud drifting in the breeze. Will this be our last chance? But for what? From the village drying up to sand, the town without jobs, the hands that never learned to write, the eyes that barely read, the soul hunger, stump and trade. Am I writing my poem again? Have I become the exile I so mock and detest? How to walk this sea? How to not believe that such is possible? Arrived in Kufra, the cramped 4x4s, the Hilux where spent bodies cling to wooden poles, Ivecos, hundreds packed swaying death's wave, emptied in the camp divided between sheets of galvanized, the courtyard littered, bottles, clothes, old photographs, like some carnival bacchanal the night before, a town facing massacre just fled, an empty, once crowded barracoon where the signal is one ribbon strong. It is from here that I send her all my love. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Marilyn Nelson, and I'm going to read two ekphrastic poems. I spent last night in an apartment in Harlem and had breakfast on Malcolm X Boulevard. And as I was walking up 127th Street, I noticed that someone had scratched in the sidewalk before the cement hardened the sentence, "Art saves." So I carried that during the day and decided to read a couple of poems about art. The first poem I will read is part of a collaborative project I did with a painter of watercolors. Her name is Holly Brigham, and when we met, she had just started working on a project in which she was painting portraits of nuns who became famous artists. And the first one she worked on was Hildegard of Bingen, and by chance, I had a serious interest in Hildegard and had gone to Bingen to do research about her, and so we connected on that. I'm going to read a poem about a Japanese nun whose name was Otagaki Ringetsu. This is dated 1865, and I think that's all you need to know. It's the story of her life and her work. Otagaki Ringetsu. Shame daughter of samurai and geisha, but adopted by an honorable family. I was given happiness snatched away. Husbands, children, they vanished like noon dew. The only certainty is impermanence. So I cut my hair, put on the nun's black robe, and became this humble servant, Lotus Moon, who gathers mud to form into vessels, reverently aware of each moment. Between my palms, I knead a lump of clay, warming it into flexibility and shaping a welcoming receptacle for water, tea, sake, or emptiness. Each carries, like a scent borne on a breeze, the memory of one single moment my poem catches, inscribed under the glaze. In whose dream are you dancing, butterfly? White cherry petals flutter down like snow. Small asymmetrical cups carry my fingerprints through the kiln's inferno into usefulness. They fit each holder's hand, fill it with grace, and gift each holder's heart. The moon loves me. Last night, it followed me to my bedroom. On teapots, sake sets. Pounding my robe in the spring deep stream, I pause, breathe birdsong. As I walk home through twilight mist, wild geese fly where I cannot see, voices trailing. And my second poem is based on a painting in the Met by Carrie James Marshall. This painting, which is called Studio, it was acquired by the Met this year, and there was a big introduction of the painting. It's a picture of a communal artist studio in Chicago with, I think, 5 African-American artists. Some of them are painters, and a couple of them are models. And my poem describes it. It's called Studio. In this space of laboratory quiet, artists as focused as the kitchen staff of a 4-star Michelin guide restaurant give themselves up to organized chaos. They were born with a compulsion deeper than skin deep, deeper than black. Every cell of their bodies says, make art. Their hearts repeat, make art, make art, make art. Here in the studio's silence, artists demonstrate that freedom means exploring unlimited potential, playing a part in creation. How beautiful the human body is. How complex light is on black skin. how a story can emerge from colors, how a yellow curve can become a dog. Whether you're a woman, whether you're black, no matter who you are, you can make art. Art rebuilds our hope for a shared future. It restores our courage, revives our faith. Here in the studio, as on cave walls, our species reaches toward undying truths. Every work of art was once unfinished, part in this world, part imagined. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Alicia Ostriker. I'm thrilled and honored to be here in this community. I've been writing poems about New York City since I came to live here again. The light. What is the birthplace of the light that stabs me with joy? And what is the difference between avocados sold on the street by a young man conceived in Delhi and avocados sold in the West Side Market by cornrow girls? I am anyhow afloat in tides of Puerto Rican, Cuban, Mexican, West Indian, Spanish, wavelets of Urdu, swelling like oceans, sweating like jackhammers, rasping like crows, calling out in the West Side Market, the Rite Aid, and every other shop on the street. ¿Por qué no comprendes? You don't own this city anymore. The city belongs and has always belonged to its shoals of exiles, crashing ashore in foaming, salty droplets. Como no, gringuita, with their dances and their grandmothers, with their drinking and their violence, and their burning yearning for dignity and smelling money. What is the joy? Is it those lamps of light, those babies in their strollers, those avocados with their dark green pebbled rinds shining from inside? 2 for $4 in the West Side Market and 3 for $4 from the cart. Joy, like white light between the dollar bills. Is it those volleys of light fired by ancestors who remember tenements, the sweatshops, the war, who supposed their children's children would be rich and free? Cinco de Mayo. This is also right in my neighborhood. What's that mob in the playground where I meant to sit? In sunshine, read my book. What's that uproar? PS 371 annual party, a line for food, a dozen miniature soccer games around the pool, no rules, backpacks of every hue parked on benches. Does nobody fear theirs will be stolen? Are we really in the city, or am I dreaming 3 pretty mariachis singing Cielito Lindo and making the children and their mamacitas, brown and beige, sing along Everybody knows the words. Indeed, it is New York City, Upper West Side, Cinco de Mayo. Querida, they teach the children to dance la cucaracha, kick and shake and shriek, for they say it is Mexican Independence Day. Let the city employee hugging clipboard shake her hair loose. And if 2 days ago I was fighting rush hour traffic, and if 2 days ago I was shopping for ant traps, and if 3 days ago I was fighting rush hour traffic, let there be traffic in another world, for here it is spring. If we are ants, crazy ants, as I sometimes think, see, we are musical ants. We are dancing ants. And I'd like to read a poem. I'm afraid to read it. This is a bad poem. This is the kind of poem one shouldn't write, but I did write it right after the election and the Women's March. It's called Chapter 1, The New King. And then a new king rose over Egypt, a rabid creature in the shape of a man without a conscience, a man with a large pink mouth that poured out lies like oil spills and hatred like carbon dioxide, greedy to devour men, women, and children, an abomination. And the spirits of the women rose up, and on a determined day they marched in the capital city and many other cities. They marched for kindness and dignity. They filled the streets and highways with love and song. They took photographs of each other's clever signs. They mocked the king. They marched with babies and men of good heart. They rallied. They returned to their homes. But the king was still there. The king still sat on his throne of money. End of chapter 1. And one more short poem, A City. My neighbor's daughter has created a city you cannot see, on an island to which you cannot swim, ruled by a noble princess and her athletic consort. All the buildings are glass so that lies are impossible. Beneath the city they have buried certain words which can never be spoken again, chiefly the word divorce, which is eaten by maggots. When it rains, you hear chimes. Rabbits race through its suburbs. The name of the city is one you can almost pronounce. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Claudia Rankine, and I will read one poem. It's called The Health of Us. We heard healthcare, and we thought public option. We thought reaching across the street, across the lines, across the aisle, was the manifestation of not a red state, not a blue state, but these United States. We thought we could be sure of ourselves in this one way, sure of our human element, our basic decency. And if justice was how love showed itself in public, then love was defined by access to care. When anyone thought that cough that burned the chest was probably nothing, but who knew? That fever After 3 days, that inability to breathe, to sleep, to wake, in justice, in love, we thought we were ready to be just as good, to be better. And despite all the ways we exist alone, no one would be on their own. We were ready to take a stab at a kind of human, kind of union. We were ready to check up, to look after in this one way. We were ready to care for each other. We were ready to see our range of possibilities as a precious commodity, to know every other as another, to live in the width of our being. And we weren't ignorant or stupid or naive or idealists or socialists or communists or Canadians. We understood the private options would still keep us alive longer. We understood the private options would treat the disease, not the symptoms. The private options meant access to specialists, to privacy, to elected procedures, to a team of doctors, to radiology, imaging, to brand name drugs. We understood the impossibility of real equality. But this single shift towards a national community, we thought, despite being founded on genocide and sustained by slavery, in God's country, we thought we were ready to see sanity inside the inhumanity. We thought the improbability of the face on Capitol Hill meant possibility. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alberto Ríos. Welcome. Bienvenidos todos. Friends out there, friends over here. Also, willkommen, bienvenu, benvindo, benvenuto, shalom, salam, aloha, croiso. I hope the gentleman with the Welsh background is here to hear me say that. So many ways to say so simple a thing, you'd think that as human beings we could have gotten this straight by now. But we're all different. We're all different, and I take that as a good thing. My mother passed away not too long ago, and my favorite uncle just recently. I'd like to read this first poem for them. I've got 2 poems tonight. Who has need, I stand with you. In this hour, let us grant to each other the grace that is ours to give. In each other, let us see ourselves and ourselves again, that all the times we have looked at our faces in a mirror should have all added up, each face our own, but a reminder as well, we are more than ourselves, that our eyes can see into that silver world as far as and beyond what we understand. Looking into a mirror, into a window pane, into the water of a lake, a photograph, we are here and over there as well. In that moment, all things are possible. In this hour of ourselves, you and I, one stronger than the other, let us speak evenly and make plain the hope that all this time has held us. Let us extend ourselves beyond ourselves into the silver, ourselves bigger and farther, 10,000 bodies to choose from suddenly in that mirror, us needing only one. so that things again seem so simple. Second poem, I grew up on the border in Arizona. I still live near there, and I would like to read a poem about life there. The news is all about the wall. That's perhaps the most laughable aspect of what's going on there. There are so many more stories. The border is so much more than a wall. This poem is called When the Ghosts Stay. You have terror, and I have tears. In this cruel way, we are for each other. We are at war. You always win, but I do not go away. You shoot me again. Again, I do not go away. You shoot with bullets, but you have nothing else. I fight back. I shoot you with fragments of childhood where you played the hero. I shoot you with memories of your mother and your little sister, Maritza. I shoot you with spring in the rolling mountains and the taste of plantain bananas and sugar. You do not fall down dead. You can kill me, where all I can do is hold up the mirror of remembering to you, the mirror of everything you have done. You set fire to me with gasoline. I set fire to you with the memory of your first love. You cut my hands off. I cut your hands off with the way you saw them disappear when he was diving into the warm water of the lake the summer of swimming with your brother. Do you remember the names of the left for dead, the damaged, the hounded, the hurt? Do you remember my name? Your fist is hard. My name is crying. You strike a match. My name is cringe. You lift your foot. My name is pain. You wake up. My name is closed eyes. Your smile mimics the size of the opening on the side of a head. A crude opening that a mean needle will stitch up tonight. Your arm laughs at me with its muscle. All this, all these tears you have made, this water you have found in the desert, all this blood you have drawn from the bodies of so many who needed it. You win. You have always won. All I can do is not go away. Not go away is my name. Thank you.
I'm David St. John, and it's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Jen and Mary and the Academy. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight with us. One of the things I hope you understand about all of the Chancellors is that we're also friends, and it's been what's allowed us to have a lifetime in poetry. And I want to thank the 92nd Street Y. Bernard reminded me earlier tonight that the first time I read for the 92nd Street Y was 1975. and I was 7. And it was for the Discovery contest, and it was run by Grace Hillman and Richard Howard, who became friends. Grace, yes, Grace, Richard. And what you might not know is that even at that time, before the Discovery contest, before the reading, there was a tradition, and some people here may have taken part of this tradition, that before the reading, the 4 winners were each given a shot of Chivas. So that night, I counted for all 4 of the winners. I want to read a poem about the great Silver Age poet Alexander Bloch. And it's about a dinner party I was fortunate to be at. One snowy night, I was smiled upon by Russian gods and found myself at dinner opposite the Moscow scholars, a married couple. He, only the world's authority on Pasternak, and she, the final word on her beloved Alexander Bloch. And as we talked, the evening gathered along the length of the white table, and I could only keep drinking the conversation in so deeply. I felt myself reaching back into the dark century, and at last I got up to leave in my black cashmere overcoat I'd found hanging on the back rack of a Venice thrift store, and became just another shadow, about to slide wordlessly into the night. And yes, it's true, it was snowing just in upstate New York, not Moscow or St. Petersburg, nor in any ancient page. Yet to anyone who saw me walking, I imagined myself as the most lyrical shadow alive. And I'm just going to read one more poem. It's a poem in memory of my friend, the poet Larry Levis, who died more than 20 years ago now at the age of 49. And when I was 18, Larry introduced me to Philip Levine, and my life was pretty much set. The one who should write my elegy is dead. The one who should write my elegy is dead. When we made that bet, he said, most likely I'd be the loser, writing his elegy instead. Nothing is as beautiful as nothing, he once said. So hip, just chain-smoking camels, or riding his shaky triumph up Van Ness, and the one who should write my elegy is dead. I guess I always knew I'd have to write my own elegy for him instead. Rambo on a tractor, Anna says, or Jagger pirouetting through the ranch's drying shed. The one who should write my elegy is dead, so I won't rehearse again those hungers that we fed, or expose both the cruelties and those we shared. I'll simply try again to finish writing this last elegy instead of looking back And tonight, my daughter Vivian's off with friends, and Anna's reading Of All Things, Winter Stars in bed. And the one who should write my elegy is dead. And I'm the one, the loser, left here just as he said I'd be left here, writing his elegy instead. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Arthur Z., and this is also my last reading as a Chancellor. And I also want to extend my thanks to Jen and Mary and everyone at the Academy of American Poets for their amazing work. It's been such an honor to be a Chancellor over the last 6 years. And like David, I also want to thank the 92nd Street Y for hosting this wonderful reading tonight. I'm going to read 3 short poems. After a New Moon. Each evening you gaze in the southwest sky as a crescent extends in Argentine light. When the moon was new, your mind was desireless, but now both waxed to the world. While your neighbor's field is cleared, your corner plot is strewn with desiccated sunflower stalks. You scrutinize the bare apricot limbs that have never set fruit, the wisteria that has never blossomed, and wince hearing how at New Year's teens bashed in a door and clubbed strangers. Near a pond, someone kicks a dog out of a pickup. Each second, a river edged with ice shifts course. Last summer's exposed tractor tire is nearly buried under silt. An owl lifts from a poplar while the moon, no, the human mind, moves from brightest bright to darkest dark. Caveat. A dog's bark has use, and so does honey and a harpoon. The Inuit used the undercoat wool of the musk ox, caveat, to make scarves and hats. The unexpected utility of things is a calculus. A wooden spoon in a ceramic jar by the stove has flavors and stains from tomatoes and garlic, cilantro and potato broth. It has nicks and scorch lines, the oil of human hands. Aspirin may be sifted out of willow bark, but of what use other than to the butterfly or a butterfly's wings? The weight of a pin is equivalent to 100 postage stamps, and words articulated with care may heal a rift across waters. An unspoken pang may, like an asymptote, approach visible speech. It runs closer and closer, but does not touch. As it runs out of sight, words are mulled. Venus, a black speck, flies across the sun. And this last poem is a new poem. It's called kintsugi, which is a Japanese word that means golden joinery. And in Japanese culture, it's the art of joining broken pieces of pottery back together using gold lacquer. Kintsugi. He slips on ice near a mailbox. No gemsbok leaps across the road. A singer tapped an eagle feather on his shoulders. Women washed indigo-dyed yarn in this river, but today gallium and germanium particles are washed downstream. Once they dynamited dikes to slow advancing troops. Picking psilocybin mushrooms and hearing cowbells in the mist. As a child, he was tied to a sheep and escaped marauding soldiers. An apple blossom opens to 5 petals. As he hikes up a switchback, he remembers undressing her. From the train window, he saw they were on ladders cutting fruit off prickly pear. In the desert, a crater of radioactive glass. Assembling shards, he starts to repair a gray bowl with gold lacquer. They ate psilocybin mushrooms, gazed at the pond undressed. Hunting a turkey in the brush, he stops. From the ponderosa pines, hoo, hoo, hoo. Thank you.